When was the last time a VR game made you go,
yeah, get him, dude. Oh my gosh, he's dead. Oh my gosh, that man is dead.
This is Vertigo 2, and it is easily one of the best VR games I have ever played. Made by a single developer who previously worked with Valve, this game is intense, weird, and has the same level of polish you'd expect out of a AAA title. But most of you have probably never heard of this game due to it only being on PCVR and PSVR2. Yeah, let's be real, if it's not on Quest, it doesn't exist. So in this video, I'm gonna break down what makes this game incredible and prove to you why Vertigo 2 is the greatest VR game you've never played. What is this, and why are there two of them? Vertigo is described by the English dictionary as a whirling sensation causing you to feel off balance. Wait, what the fuck? Vertigo is a small franchise of 2 games, providing roughly 15 to 20 hours of intense gameplay, a story that doesn't take itself too seriously, and plenty of moments that'll make even the most hardcore of gamers go, what the? The story follows a reaction core malfunction in an underground facility, which accidentally kidnaps a bunch of aliens from their home universes and teleports them into the facility where the reactor core is contained. You are one of these aliens, and you have a more human complexion, but are obviously still an alien. And you're trying to get to the reactor core to get home to your universe. That's the general gist of it, but there's a lot more to the story that we'll talk about later. Most of these games were developed by Zach Brown, a young developer who previously worked with Valve on The Lab and Moondust. And as it turns out, he's roughly the same age as me.
What the fuck am I doing with my life?
The first game has not aged well, as he made it back in high school, but Vertigo 2 is a much more polished and improved game that shares many similarities with another VR title, Half-Life Alyx. Unlike Alyx though, Vertigo 2 offers a much more diverse, colorful, and chaotic experience in terms of gameplay and design. And given that it was made by one guy, he can basically add whatever the hell he wants into the game. And he absolutely does. To further help understand how incredibly fun and extremely bizarre this game is, I'm gonna break down my points into a few smaller categories, diving into the gameplay, the combat, the environment and story, and the various mindfucks this game throws at you on a whim. So without further ado, Zach describes Vertigo as a half-like, and I'd say this definition is pretty spot on, as both it and its wildly more popular predecessor share similar gameplay loops of moving from point A to point B, killing enemies, and collecting items and guns. The main difference between the two is that Alyx plays it very safe with most of its VR mechanics. This is understandable, given that VR was very new at the time and didn't have a market yet. Valve obviously didn't want to turn people away from VR with a super high octane game that would make people sick, which was a very smart play on Valve's part, because they wanted the Valve Index to be a success. And as we all know, Valve doesn't fail at anything, right? But Half-Life Alyx came out over 5 years ago. Now that VR is more popular and more users have had a chance to get used to VR, Vertigo 2 has been able to take more risks, as more dedicated VR players will be looking for a more exciting experience than just slowly walking down a hallway and shooting zombies and headcrabs. The first and most clever example of the higher risk mentality is this game's teleport. The vast majority of VR games have a teleport for accessibility purposes, and while this does exist in Vertigo 2, it takes it a step further by encouraging you to use your teleport to move in cool ways, or get to areas you wouldn't be able to normally. You're also encouraged to use it to dodge attacks from big bosses. It's not a dodge roll by any means, as you can still get hit while using it, but for some of the bigger and more telegraphed attacks, it can save you from otherwise taking a crap ton of damage, and just makes you feel cool in the process. This is an extremely creative use of what would otherwise be just another VR mechanic, and this is a common theme we're going to see throughout this game. The second way in which Vertigo 2 takes more risks is in the variety of puzzles this game throws at you. In today's market, unless a VR game is entirely puzzle-based, most will generally have similar puzzle types throughout the entire game that just get harder. Alyx is the perfect example of this, as with the exception of Jeff, every puzzle in the game is some form of electrical puzzle. Vertigo 2, on the other hand, has vastly different puzzles that get more complicated the further you get into the game, some being more intuitive, and others requiring you to think outside the box. There's always something new in each area that keeps the game from getting stale, And this leaves you wondering what could be next instead of getting burned out on the same puzzles over and over and over again. Seriously, if I see one more of these goddamn puzzles. And finally, Vertigo 2 gives you a much greater sense of mobility than its Half-Life predecessor. Being insanely mobile in VR is not a new thing, as there are plenty of games that give you plenty of ways to move, or will throw you around like a carnival ride with no safety harness. But for the few VR games that exist in the Half-Life genre, I'd argue that Vertigo 2 is the most mobile out of all of them. You got jump pads, steam vents, elevators, low gravity, teleporting, swimming. There are so many different ways to move from point A to point B, and for a VR game like this, that is huge. All of these things help Vertigo 2 stand out as a more advanced VR game than its predecessors. It is still absolutely possible to enjoy this game as a casual VR gamer, but in regards to movement and puzzles, they cater more towards players who are more accustomed to VR. And I haven't even talked about... We're all familiar with bullet-based guns at this point, as almost every popular VR game uses some form of modern weapons because they make big boom sounds and make us feel like badass action men. Vertigo 2's setting is much more futuristic and cartoony compared to the other games, which means Zach has been able to get much more creative with his choice of weapons. And boy does this man get creative. Every gun is weird, cool, and so much fun to use. Running around and blasting things with plasma, antimatter, tungsten spikes, or whatever the hell this thing shoots is dope as hell. And for you enthusiasts out there who still love bullet-based guns, you're still covered with a classic AK-47 and a mounted airship minigun. While you could decide to blast your way through the game with only one gun, this game has a variety of very clever ways of encouraging you to swap between your guns so you have a chance to appreciate how intricate and chaotic every single one of them is. So let me break it down real quick. This is self-explanatory, as the guns you collect later in the game are generally more powerful than the ones you collect earlier in the game, or some are just better in different scenarios. The shotgun will work better on smaller enemies that get in your face, while the giant railgun works better on the big cube man, who will squash you if you get within 5 feet of him. This is not a new concept by any means, but it's still worth noting, as if you're still only using the pistol when you have 13 other guns at your disposal, you're either very dedicated to the gun, or you have no idea what the hell you're doing. Or... as you explore each area, you'll come across a variety of weapon upgrade stations to make your guns feel even more powerful than they already are. While most upgrades are simple improvements like more ammo, hollow sights, and damage boosts, some upgrades can fundamentally change how a certain gun works, with some examples being the semi-auto shotgun, the smart eject SMG, the magnet bomb grenade launcher, and the time-slowing railgun. Just look at that slow-mo. That is some good slow-mo. There's just something exciting about getting new attachments for your guns, and if you know you have something cool on a gun you don't use very often, chances are you're going to use that gun more often. Ammo is a scarce resource in most games, and if you're a little too trigger happy in early fights, running out of ammo when you need it the most is a very real possibility. But by the same token, having too much ammo can make the game too easy as you're never going to run out of it. Vertigo 2 solves both these problems with its very unique ammo system. Instead of finding ammo in boxes or just randomly on the ground, ammo is instead synthesized directly on your belt, acting as a sort of cooldown for each of your guns, encouraging you to swap to a different one when you run out. The recharge time scales with how powerful the weapon is, where weaker guns like the plasma pistol will recharge in a few seconds, and the more powerful ones like the railgun will take fucking years to charge. This system, ironically, creates both scenarios. You technically have infinite ammo, but you can also run out of ammo very quickly. So what is it? Do you have unlimited ammo, or do you have no ammo?
It's a paradox. There is no answer.
Yet another thing this game steals from Alex, the weapon wheel and hand holsters. While this seems like a small detail to point out, since inventories aren't necessarily a groundbreaking discovery, in the context of Vertigo 2 being a more action-centered game, a weapon wheel works incredibly well to keep you consistently in the flow of combat without breaking your immersion by opening a pause menu, fucking around with holsters, or dropping your gun like a dumbass. Okay, that was a lot of talk about guns. We need to move on. Some other things to note about the combat in Vertigo 2 are melee, health management, and enemy types. Melee is almost non-existent in this game, but that makes sense given that almost every enemy in this game uses some form of ranged weaponry. It doesn't fit the flow of combat in this game, and there's only 2 melee weapons in the entire game, with both of them having extra functionality outside of melee. Health is very important in any video game where you can die, as it lets you know if you're at tip-top shape or if you're extremely close to reuniting with Echo VR. Vertigo 2 handles health by displaying on the biometric arm-mounted multi-tool, or BAM for short. It will automatically regenerate health up to 50% on easier difficulties and allow you to heal from multiple sources, such as health stations, syringes, or random ass fruit you didn't bother washing. It's simple, effective, and the percentage-based health can help you track how much damage each enemy does, which is a very nice bonus. There are a lot of enemies in Vertigo 2. You got hand zombies, bugs, airships, lava monsters, alligators, sap children, flesh cubes, purple cubes with legs, robot cubes with legs, ninja robots, big robots, small robots, normal robots, hot dogs with guns. There are so many enemies in Vertigo 2, and while almost all of them can be killed with a simple gun blast, some require you to be a little more creative or attentive to how you face them. What's even more impressive is that none of them feel out of place. I have never seen a single player game with such a diverse cast of enemies that just makes sense. Freddy Fazbear could be in this game as an enemy, and I wouldn't think twice about it. And this is all due in part to the ingeniously crafted... I'm gonna try to keep this section as spoiler-free as possible while I talk about the environments. But once I get into the story, I'll be talking about some very big plot points. So if you don't want them spoiled, be sure to look out for the very big and obvious spoiler warning. I guarantee you won't miss it. So to recap the basic gist of the story and give context to the environment, you are an alien named Sonia. You were kidnapped from your home universe and were transported to the reactor in a Planck facility along with other aliens. And you're trying to get to the reactor core to get home. Just based on this context, you'd probably imagine the level design in this game would mostly consist of underground facility hallways and cool science rooms, something like Portal or SCP Containment Breach. While this does hold mostly true for Vertigo 1 and its remaster, this is not the case for Vertigo 2. There are entire ecosystems, cities, and a fucking ocean just chilling in the reactor. All these environments are so cool to explore, and you really have no idea what's coming next. Because one moment you're in some underground caves, and the next moment you're in a giant city in the middle of a civil war. Despite there being an absurd amount of environments for one game, they all play super well and all have interesting and unique gameplay mechanics to help differentiate them from the other places you visit in the game. Not to mention that the sound design in each area is impeccable. It is somewhat drowned out by the music, which is also fantastic, but it's still something to note as bad sound can easily break your immersion. And thankfully, this game's sound design is incredible. Speaking of sound being important, this video is sponsored by Antlion Audio. Microphone quality is a big thing when it comes to online gaming and content creation. Most gaming headsets have that shitty, doo-doo garbage microphone that we're all familiar with. And the built-in microphone on most VR headsets aren't great either. Antlion Audio has solved this issue with their line of both wired and wireless mod mics, and they sent me their wireless version to test out and review. I've heard a lot about this microphone, and after having a chance to try for myself, I can see what the hype is about. This is the sound on the Quest 3. This is the sound of the Mod Mic Wireless. The gameplay sections of this video have me using this microphone for my voice. And with its 12 hours of battery life, the ability for it to clip onto any headset, and its compatibility with Windows, Mac, Linux, and PlayStation, this is the best microphone I've used for flat screen online gaming and VR content creation. If you're looking for a high quality headset microphone that will last you a long time, check them out in the link below, and thank you again Antlion Audio for sponsoring this video. The reason why all these environments work in the context of this game and don't feel extremely out of place is mainly due to how the story doesn't take itself too seriously. Very big and obvious spoiler warning. The story of this game rides a very fine line between being super serious and not taking itself too seriously. And it does this almost to perfection. The main story of you trying to get home through the reactor core is pretty serious in itself, but there's also a more serious subplot where an interdimensional void delegation is using you as a catalyst to open a portal in the reactor core. Why are they doing this? There's this big, powerful artifact that they want, and they will literally destroy the universe just to get their hands on it. But you don't know that until much later in the game, so ignore everything I just said. There are plenty of moments where the game demands your attention during some story beats, others that give you a genuinely good laugh, and some that mix the absurdity and seriousness almost perfectly, with most of these moments being defined by the characters you interact with. Some examples of more serious characters are the rum walkers Enrique and Cowboy. Enrique is the one who made you the catalyst to open the portal to the Void Delegation, and Cowboy is a defector of, and is actively fighting against the Void Delegation, but is also planning to use you to kill Enrique to disrupt the delegation, as he can't do it himself because, quantum law or some bullshit, I don't know. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we have characters like Nani, who is working for Enrique, but risks your life by sending you on a mission to retrieve a very rare fruit guarded by a bunch of forest creatures just because he's hungry. He's also just a very goofy character and has a voice to match his goofy design.
You may travel in Nani boat for the small price of $10,000. Oh, are you poor? Shit, okay,
Extortion artist I am! And right in the middle, we have Brian and Officer 13. Officer 13 is a plank officer robot who's trying to stop you from reaching the reactor. But there's a point in the story where you both need to work together to escape a giant fish that swallowed the both of you. His character, for the most part, has a more serious archetype, but there are plenty of times when that seriousness is replaced with comedy in the most unexpected of ways.
I did not time that right. Oh God, I'm bit. I'm choked. That's it. It's all going dark. Goodbye. You didn't think I was dead, did you?
Brian is the main guy you talk to throughout the game. He provides you with valuable information throughout the game and is the main guy trying to get you to the reactor core. But he also has some very nonchalant reactions to things that don't affect him directly. The perfect example of this is when you're briefly cut off from Brian for a good chunk of the story, and when he finally finds you, his reaction is...
Wait a second, what are you doing here? Ah, it doesn't matter. I was following some weird transmissions. Thought they were from someone else. Must have just been your BAM acting up. Anyway, turns out you're not dead, so that's... news.
Okay, I see how it is, Brian. The story isn't perfect by any means, but it does an incredible job of balancing seriousness and absurdity. And that kept the story engaging throughout the game. That is not an easy thing to do. And since the entire thing was created by one guy, we can forgive some of the shortcomings in the story, and honestly, I couldn't possibly ask for any more. Now that we've got some of the more tame stuff out of the way, let's get into the crazy shit. Now, this should be pretty obvious, but I will be spoiling some of the craziest parts of this game. If you haven't played Vertigo 2 yet, you will absolutely want to see these moments for yourself, as not only are some of them just absurdly out there, but others break the fourth wall in super meta ways that will not elicit the same reaction if you know of their existence. For those who did not pay attention to any of that, very big and obvious spoiler warning. Starting off this list are the numerous Easter eggs and references to other franchises. It's no secret that Zach is a massive gamer himself, but the number of things this man was able to squeeze into this game as nods to other franchises is actually insane. Most of these are references to Valve games like Half-Life and Portal, with some parts of the story making fun of the franchises.
ridiculous. We wouldn't possibly have you fight deadly aliens in a high-tech facility using a crowbar. That would be absurd.
Or just stealing from them entirely. You can even find a real portal gun and use it throughout the entire game. Oh, wait, sorry, wrong game. There we go. But some Easter eggs cater to games that Zach particularly enjoys, with the best example of this being an entire secret boss fight based on Ultra Kill. That is the most dedicated Easter egg I've ever seen from a single indie dev. Moving on, we have the 6 secret weapons that you can find throughout the game. Some areas in this game will have secret side areas with secret weapons, but don't just think you can just stroll in, pick them up, and stroll out. You gotta earn these weapons in a variety of ways. Let's use the Gordalpon, the first one you find, as an example of this. Just imagine picking up what you think is a portal gun and being teleported to the moon, where you need to use it to shoot enemies before they blow you up. Almost every secret weapon has something crazy like this, with the only exception being the final secret weapon, which unlocks the true ending of the game. Now, to be fair, the vast majority of them are not any better than the normal guns, but just going through the challenges to get them is insanely cool, and oftentimes will easily cause you a mindfuck. Now, starting to get into the story territory, this next one is the entirety of Chapter 10. This chapter starts with you taking a raft into a city divided by war, and you are immediately faced with choosing which side of the war you want to be on, siding with the Church of the Holy Hypercube, or siding with the Rebellion. On my first go, I chose the Rebellion, because who doesn't love a good rebellion? Yeah, let's do it, guys. Oh my god, they're communist. I just wanted to fight against the church because haha, revolution funny. Nowhere in the contract did it say I was joining the communist robots in their mission to take the Holy Hypercube for themselves. On the flip side though, choosing to fight with the church would put you against these communist robots. And instead of being forced to fight a giant dinosaur to prove yourself, you're instead indoctrinated into the church and undergo the weirdest acid trip of your life. Don't do drugs, kids. This entire chapter hinges on your one decision at the beginning of it, and this means that two players can have very different experiences and come out of the chapter with very different weapons. This choice even matters later in the game, as you can find some of the Revolution members later, and your choice in this chapter can determine if they're friendly or hostile towards you. Setting aside the whole communist revolution mindfuck, this type of decision making, where it actually has an impact on the story, is something we rarely get to see in most linear story-based games in general. And this, in turn, makes this chapter so much cooler as a result. Moving on, we have the experimental portal in chapter 15. Now, you're obviously trying to get home, and an experimental multidimensional portal seems like a surefire shot. What could possibly go wrong? A lot, actually. A lot can go very wrong. Instead of teleporting you to your home world, you're instead teleported to multiple other dimensions as you attempt to find the one that's your home. Dimension hopping on its own is trippy in itself, but the dimensions you go to are just, what the hell, man? Some of these dimensions are fine. Some are a little strange. And this one in particular almost gave me a panic attack. I am thalassophobic. The things that trigger it are big sea creatures and gigantic pools of water. Imagine my horror when I was dropped against my will into a giant ocean with multiple giant fish, a giant leviathan, and a crab as large as a mountain. This footage in the background isn't even mine, because for some reason, this is what my spectator cam looks like, and I refuse to go back to that section because respectfully, fuck that. As if my thalassophobia wasn't triggered enough by that, the next one is, you guessed it, being swallowed by a giant fish and having to escape it. This section is creepy and already bizarre in itself, as being swallowed by and finding your way out of a giant creature isn't a common trope in most games. But you know how your body has a really intelligent immune system? Well, so does this thing. Some of you who are more observant may be seeing these creatures now and thinking, huh, those look familiar. You would be correct, as you literally find a deformed immune system creature being bullied by its peers and use it as a fucking grenade launcher to kill the fish and escape it. This is proof right here that ChatGPT will never be able to replace creative storytelling and game design. The fact that Zach brought this absurd string of ideas to life is insane to me. This guy is a creative genius, and it's about to get a whole lot weirder. Moving on, we have the most meta moment in any VR game I've ever experienced. I'm sure most of you know about the secret crack in the wall in the Boneworks redacted chamber by this point. And this is somehow even weirder than that. Very early on in the game, so early that you can experience it in the demo, you'll be trying to escape Brian's facility while it's on lockdown. When I first did this, I was just going on my merry way. And as I was finishing putting the passcode to open the next area, something caught my eye.
Wait, what the fuck?
It's me. Not in-game me, but actual Cubehead me.
How did he get this? I'm so confused. Wait, can I sue him for money?
Clearly, I had a lot of questions, but thankfully, I don't have to sue Zach for including me in the game without paying for my incredible looks. What's actually going on here is that this game is using your Steam or PlayStation profile picture and is putting it in this picture frame. This connection to Steam and PlayStation also extends to phones you can find, as taking photos with them will show up as screenshots in your libraries. This is one of the most meta moments in any video game I have ever experienced, and I don't think anything is going to top that for the longest time. And finally, arguably even more meta than the Steam profile picture are the loading screens. Normally, loading screens are nothing more than a simple pause for the player, a way to stop the action for a little bit while the game loads the next area or reloads an area after you die. But Vertigo 2 takes the loading screen to another level by throwing some humorous, actively insulting, or even fourth wall breaking messages simply because it can. There's obviously the useful tip here and there, especially earlier on, but once you get comfortable with this game, it will not hesitate to make fun of you. And I absolutely love it. Never in my life would I think I'd be excited to see a loading screen in a video game. And if that doesn't cause you a mindfuck, I honestly don't know what will. It's not uncommon for indie developers, or developers in general, to push out some post-launch updates with new content or tweaks to the game to make some areas easier or harder. But usually, most generally don't do anything drastic with the game, and most don't release new content outside the base game. Zach Brown is not most developers. Since the launch of the game, Zach has released 2 major content updates that have fundamentally changed how players can interact with the game. The first is the Bottomless update, heavily focusing on making Vertigo 2 replayable, introducing modifiers, alternative playable characters, and a full community level editor. Mutators let you modify the base game in various ways, giving you a new and fresh experience every time. You could be an unkillable god with infinite ammo, have your guns randomized every 30 seconds, slow down the game, speed up the game, spawn more enemies, or just have the classic gaming joke of giving everyone a big head. The new playable characters included ones we know from the game, such as Brian, Officer 13, and Nani. And much like Mutators, they also fundamentally changed how you play the game. Brian turns the game into a boomer shooter, with faster movement and ammo pickup instead of having to reload your weapons.
Hey, so slight correction because I'm stupid. You still gotta reload as Brian. You just pick up your ammo instead of having it synthesized. So, oops.
Officer 13 has a holographic HUD and can occasionally buy supply drops. And Nani has magic powers like telekinesis and levitation.
Ow.
And finally, the biggest part of this update, a built-in level editor. This let the community go crazy with creating their very own custom levels in-game and sharing them online. To say this update was huge is an understatement. There were so many new ways to play the base game, and the level editor basically gave the community an infinite amount of ways to create and do whatever the hell they want with the game. But with this update, it seemed like this was the end of Vertigo 2, as Zach was hinting that he was moving on to future projects. But then quite literally out of nowhere, Zach dropped a trailer for a full DLC after a full year of silence, and the community went wild. This DLC would pick up from the true ending of the game, where Cowboy, disguised as an anime girl for some reason, enlists Brian's help to free an ancient architect to help them fight against the Void Delegation. Most of the DLC is just a dungeon crawler where you collect various artifacts, and while you might think this is a little mundane, each section is immensely different and requires a different artifact to continue. This is a different type of game from Vertigo 2, where instead of trying to get from point A to point B, you know where point B is, but need to go around and become stronger to get to it and face it head on. Some of these artifacts include a reflector that charges your revolver, a robotic eye that lets you see enemy health, up to 10 rings that reduce incoming damage, whatever the hell this thing is, whoa! And most importantly of all, the grappling hook. I don't need to explain why this was a huge deal for Vertigo 2. This DLC was a massive hit amongst the community. Not only did it add more lore and tons of things to mess around with, but it also serves as a form of closure for Vertigo 2, where the original ending left some loose ends. And much like the base game, it also had some mindfucks of its own.
Can you transport us back to my home universe? We're trying to fight Apollyon.
Finding a game that truly blows me away is very rare in today's market, especially when it comes to VR. To this day, I'm still chasing down that high that I first got when I first put on my Quest 2 and stepped into Beat Saber, Superhot, and Saints and Sinners. Vertigo 2 is the closest I've gotten to recreating that high, as it is such a unique experience that cannot be replicated outside of VR in the same capacity. And the fact that it was made by only one person is even more insane to me. While Vertigo 2 is an incredible experience, I feel like there's something more we can take away from this. Making something as creative and in-depth as Vertigo 2 is no easy feat, but we've been witnessing a rise of incredibly creative indie games springing up for both flat screen and VR. To me, Vertigo 2 represents every aspect of what makes indie games incredible. Being able to do whatever you want with your game, taking more risks to create even cooler experiences, and creating something that you are genuinely passionate about. We have dozens of incredible games just waiting for us to explore, and Vertigo 2 is the quintessential example of indie games in VR.
And that to me is why Vertigo 2 is the greatest VR game you've never played.